Hi, this is Griselda Togobo, and I am delighted to be sitting with Sheridan Ash. Sheridan was the Forward Ladies Businesswoman of the Year 2022. The judges described it as truly inspirational. She wears two hats. She's a technology leader at PwC. That is in itself a very heavy title. And alongside that, she's also CEO at Tech She Can. So Sheridan is just amazing. She ticks a lot of boxes. She's human. She's talented. She's dyslexic. She's been a single mom. There's nothing she hasn't done. So today I'm just going to sit with her and pick her brains, and we're just going to have a chat with you watching us. Okay. So Sheridan, thank you so much for making time for me today.
It's a pleasure. I'm so delighted to see you.
So I know you left school at 16. And I know people are always intrigued by that.
Well, I mean, I think you just mentioned the dyslexia. And I mean, to be fair, when I left school, while I was at school, it wasn't recognised. I mean, it wasn't a word that was used at all. And it was never talked about. So I had everything from, oh, she's just stupid, to she's deaf. It was a pretty rough school time. I mean, it wasn't the best experience, and it did result in an awful lot of bullying. But I had a fantastic home life. I had a really loving family, and that made a big difference. And I had a lot of friends, and that made a big difference. But I did end up, because of all that, I ended up leaving school with absolutely no qualifications at all at 16, and just thought, what am I going to do with my life? So it was quite a difficult time, but I then ended up having the most amazing career early in life, because I got spotted with my mum out shopping in Bond Street. I mean, we couldn't afford any of the clothes in Bond Street, but we used to love and go and look in all the windows. And this person just came up to us in the street, and I felt quite secure about it because I was with my mum. It wasn't like I was on my own. And just said, "Oh, have you ever thought about doing any modelling?" No, I hadn't. But anyway, the result of that conversation was that I ended up being a fashion model for a number of years.
Wow.
So, I always talk about wanting to escape from Wellingborough, which is where I was brought up. And I didn't just escape. I got to travel the world and modeling, and into that world at 16. And I actually found it brilliant. I had a fantastic time, and it was a really happy and great time in my life. So I got to travel, do lots of interesting things, and meet lots of interesting people. So not what I expected as my first career at all, but that was literally the first career that I've had. I've had many others.
So do people at PwC know that you started off as a model? Are there a lot of technology leaders who started off being models?
Well, high fashion to high tech. That's quite a good title, isn't it?
Yeah.
I do now, but in all honesty, for the large majority of my career, I didn't talk about the dyslexia, didn't talk about the modelling. I didn't talk about the fact that I was a single mum. The world was a very different place when I was coming through the ranks initially to what it is now. I think we live in a really much more open place now, and people can much more be themselves. And I certainly work for a firm, PwC are brilliant at that. You can be yourself at work.
Yeah.
And so everybody knows now, it's not a secret. And what I've thought over the last sort of 10 years of my life in particular is, I never sort of wanted to show my vulnerabilities before, because I was always worried about all of those things that I did and being judged in this really sort of corporate environment. But then I sort of thought, oh, sod that, I'm just going to talk about it. And because if I talk about it, then others maybe will talk about their backgrounds and experience. And won't that encourage other people that are different to think, okay, well, if she comes from that background and she's a single parent and she's this, maybe I could have a career in a professional services firm like PwC or in technology. And, that I think that's really positive, that more women and men, that more people, diverse, different types of people now will talk about their backgrounds and their stories and encourage others to, think that, well, there's a place for me in those worlds.
Yeah. So in addition to being able to help others by telling your story, how has that helped you?
Well, I think it's made me be more me.
Yeah.
Made me feel that I'm more me and more authentic in the workplace. And I mean, there's a lovely thing, isn't there? As you get older, you don't really care quite so much. So I think it's an age thing as well. And I was very unconfident when I was younger because of probably all those things that I've spoken about. I didn't have the greatest confidence in the world. And you'd never know that if you looked at pictures of me modeling or anything like that. I looked super confident, but I wasn't. And then to go from that world and think, as a single parent, I thought, I've got to get a job that's going to have longevity. And I went back into the education system and then went into the corporate world. You build your confidence over time, but I just think, sometimes I don't recognize the me in the work world that I was 20 years ago to what I am now. But actually what I am now is me. I was pretending a lot then, whereas now I'm much more who I am. And, just what you see is who I am rather than I'm trying to pretend to be somebody I think other people want me to be.
Yes. I think we all think successful women look a certain way, act a certain way, wear certain clothes. And so then in your 20s and 30s, you feel a need to borrow that persona.
Yeah.
And it works for a while.
Yeah. And to be fair, all the role models I had in my early corporate career, a lot of the female role models acted more like the men.
Yes.
I think there was that, in the 80s and 90s, a lot of the women, and I'm not saying this to be in a disrespectful way to them, but there was this sort of, they were almost like imitating the men to get on. And I made a decision very early on that you can go two ways in life, can't you? You can continue that sort of, I'm going to be what people need me to be to move forward and to get to the top positions in life. Or you have to decide that it's actually my values and who I am as a person that's more important. And I decided to go that way. And I probably did it, early on, it wasn't a conscious thing, but as I got a bit older, I realized that's what I was doing and I consciously did it. Now I'm sure that I've been held back because of it. I'm sure that there's things that I didn't achieve because of it. But actually what's happened is because I've stuck to those values and those beliefs and I've been who I am, it's led me to things like being able to do Tech She Can, that maybe I'd have been richer, more senior if I'd have gone the other way. But you know what? I don't regret the person that I've been, because I think that has led me to doing some of the things that have been the most important in my life. And I know that will be the most important things in my life in the future.
Yeah. So I know our community has quite a number of women who are raising children on their own. And I know it's quite difficult juggling that with a career and having the ambition to do well within that career. Tell me about that phase of your life when you were a single mom and the choices you made and how you just got through that phase. Because let's face it, it's hard enough doing it with a partner. I can only imagine it being twice as hard on your own.
Well, first of all, I've done every mistake in the book. And women must not be, and there's obviously male single parents as well.
Yes.
So don't forget that it's not just women, but the majority are women. So, I've put my foot through 5 pairs of tights in the morning, rushing around and screaming and panicking. I've gone to work in odd shoes. I've done it all. I've been stressed out. It's sort of, I've been in all those situations, but the things that got me through and made it bearable are 2 things, really. Well, one, I absolutely loved being a mum, and I only had 1 child, and I had a very easy child when he was young anyway. When he got to be a teenager, it wasn't so great. But I had really good friends. I cultivated fantastic friends through the schools network. And I found other people in the same position as me, but also other people who weren't. And actually, I came to rely on them, but they were really good friends. So if I, and I would do my share, but I tended to do more of my share at the weekend. So a lot of other parents would pick my son up from school, excuse me, would take him home for an hour until I could get back. And I would reciprocate in the way that I could by, having the child over for half a day at the weekend or whatever. So I did find that building that community and helping and getting help from others and, actually asking for help, being brave enough to ask for help. And, in those days, there wasn't the flexible working. I mean, you were in the office 5 days a week, all day for 12 hours a day sometimes. So, I do think things are I hope things are a little bit easier today for a lot of women, that there is a bit more flexibility. And I know not every organization's the same, but don't go and work for one that isn't. A lot of organizations are really good on this now, and they really help parents overall, whether you're a single parent or there's more of you. But, be choosy. Be choosy about who you go and work for, because a lot of organizations take this very seriously and do flexible working.
Yes. So in previous conversations, you mentioned having a mentor, a sponsor, someone who really had an impact in your career over the years, and actually having to make some lateral moves as a result of that relationship. Can you talk about that? Because I think sometimes people have this view that it's always on the up and up and up, and somehow they can do it on their own without having, allies and support in the room.
Well, I'm a big fan of finding your cheerleaders, as I like to call them. So, who are the people that will stand up for you, support you, offer really good advice, but not just that, will actually help you move up if that's what you want, or find other opportunities. That isn't necessarily about a grade increase, but it could be that it finds you an opportunity that's more suited to what you want to do, or will get you to where you want to go eventually. Now, 90% of those cheerleaders for me have been men, because I've been in a very male-dominated environment, but they are there. And I've always been so impressed by the fantastic men that I have worked with. And the opportunities I've had because of them has been extraordinary. I mean, over the last 6 or 7 years, thanks to some great male cheerleaders, as I do like to call them, rather than allies. I've had I've probably had the best experiences and the best opportunities of my life. And it hasn't necessarily been about me progressing to more and more senior places, but it's given me things that are much more fulfilling than what I was doing before, giving me opportunities to get new experiences, new training, which actually I find more rewarding than necessarily just trying to get more and more senior. Depends what you're looking for. Latterly, I've had many more sort of female cheerleaders, and actually I do think your cheerleaders can be more junior, can be peers, and can be more senior. But the way that I've gained those mostly has been through TechSheCan. So TechSheCan has got this wonderful community of women and men. I mean, we have lots of fantastic men as well now, but it started with a group of women that were really passionate to make a difference. And we come from loads of different organizations, but we support each other, we help each other. And that's been the first time, honestly, in my life that I've had that sort of female support, which has been absolutely brilliant.
So I know there are lots of women as well who have projects in large corporates that they're trying to take ownership of and maybe even spin out, as you've done with TechSheCan. How did you make that business case for PwC to support you in establishing a new charity, and even to give you the days off to work on the charity?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's quite an unusual situation to be in, and credit to PwC for supporting it. But I think the key thing was that I was in a position where I was working directly with the board at the time, and I understood the priorities of PwC, and PwC have priorities very much aligned to what Tech She Can is doing, you know, around getting more gender balance in technology, but also making sure that you do that by increasing ethnicity or different types of diversity within tech, and really focusing on social mobility. So when you're looking at making a case to get funding or to set an initiative up with resources, I mean, the key thing is making sure it completely aligns to the values of the organization at the very top table. You know, because if it's not, I mean, people have come to me for help and funding before, and I'm like, but what you're asking for doesn't align with, you know, why would they do it? Yes, of course, it's a nice thing to do, but organizations can't do everything that they're asked to do. They have, you know, they'll all have values, they'll all have things they're trying to achieve. So it needs to be something that very much aligns with those things. And the worst thing you can do is go moaning and complaining. So when I set up the Women in Tech initiative at PwC, I'd already done my research. I had my stats on the company. I had some evidence of what was good practice externally. And I went and I just said, I'd love to give you some information and talk about some things I think we could do to get women into tech at PwC. And so I presented it in a really positive way. And they were just like, you know, we agree with what you said, we're going to do it. And that's really how it started, and what eventually led to Tech She Can, just going with a really positive mind frame around it, and really understanding the business priorities of the firm and matching that all together and saying, look, this is what we can do to really have a positive impact for the company and wider society. So I think approaching it in those ways, I think, gets you in the door and makes people want to listen to what you've got to say.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think sometimes when you talk about being positive, people think, well, I'm positive all the time. It's not getting me anywhere. But actually being negative gets you nowhere at all, because everybody's so tired of people moaning and whinging and saying how hard things are. Things can be hard, but there's still a lot you can do within those constraints and within the system.
I agree. In evidence, data and evidence. People love, senior people especially, if you go with data and evidence, then, you know, they can't deny that. Even if they don't agree to do what you want to do, you've presented something that has some credibility.
Yeah. So I've seen you and Claire, your co-CEO at Tech She Can. Yeah. And that's also quite an unusual setup. You tend to do things quite differently, Sheridan.
Yeah, definitely. I like to do everything differently. But, you know, job share is such an amazing thing. Who would have known? I didn't know it was going to be amazing, but it is.
Yeah. So tell us how you've managed to keep it positive and successful between you and Claire.
Well, I do think there is a chemistry element. I don't think you can just job share randomly with anyone. You know, Claire and I are very aligned on our values, what we want to do. So there is a chemistry between us in terms of those things, you know, very aligned, very passionate about what we're trying to do. But also why it works is because Claire is fundamentally much better at some things than I am. You know, I might have a bit more experience about some things and whatever, but she fundamentally brings, I mean, such amazing skills, and she has things that I'm just not good at. And so I think together, we always talk about we are better together than apart. I mean, people call us the Ant and Dec of the tech world. We've got to come up with a better name, better sort of title than that. But I do think, you know, like they've got that chemistry and they just bounce off each other. Claire and I are like that. So if you are going to do a job share, I do think it's important to get, you know, to make sure you've got that chemistry, as it could get tricky. And of course, not try and be in competition with each other. We are the same role. And, you know, I've seen the only other job share I've seen, I felt like they were slightly competitive. And, you know, Claire and I just don't do that. And sometimes it means things that I might want to do, I recognise that Claire will probably be better than me at it. So she can do it. And and vice versa. So I think, there's many factors to it, but I'm surprised there isn't more of it.
Yes, that's what I wanted to comment on as well. There's this drive to get more women in leadership, but then as women go off and have children and have to take time off, we need job roles that are more flexible. And it's not just for women, but for men as well.
Yeah.
Work just needs to be more flexible. It needs to be malleable and adaptable to people's changing life situations. But there's also this belief that certain roles, like the CEO role and certain key roles, cannot be done on a part-time basis or as a job share because of the inherent risk involved. What do you have to say to that?
Rubbish. I mean, actually, you're more likely to do a good job if there's two of you. Let's face it, if there's two of you, you've constantly got this person that you trust to go to say, I really don't know about that. How are we going to make that happen? You've got just this other person to share everything with because you're both equally responsible for that company, for that role, for the employees, for the impact that you're trying to have. I personally find it less stressful and more reassuring to have someone to share that with. And are you less likely to make a mistake if there's two of you? Yes. In my view, yes. Because, if I come up with something, Claire, Claire will say to me or I'll say to her, oh, I'm really not sure about that, and we bounce it off each other. Surely that's got to be a really positive thing and you're more likely not to make mistakes.
So in terms of the way you and Claire approach leadership, how do your styles differ or how similar are they?
I think we're similar in some ways. I think, there are similarities. Claire's definitely much better on detail than me. She's really strong on, quite analytical, quite detailed. We both are very good on the big picture. So very good. We're both really highly strategic. But I'd say where Claire sort of beats me every day is she's just got this brain where she can take the sort of big strategic picture and get it down to the level of, well, this is exactly what we need to do. This is the resources, this is the money we'll need. She can really do that detail that I would say that I can do it, but I'm not, I'm probably not as good at it as she is. So I do think there's complementary skills. I think what I bring is, I've got probably more experience working with corporates and industry. Yeah. I mean, obviously she does as well, but I've probably just got, I'm a lot older than Claire, so I've just got more experience. And I think, I bring that experience. But I do think we're quite similar in many ways in terms of our strategic thinking and outlook and values. And I think ultimately that's what drives us together as being very successful. I mean, we always think it's funny because it's almost like we don't even need to have a plan for who's doing what. We just naturally end up going to the right place in terms of who does what. And I think, maybe that's quite unusual, but it just works.
But that's testament to the work the two of you put into making it work, isn't it? And you're doing a great job at it. So going back to your corporate career and making it through the ranks in a professional services firm is quite tough. I know there are touch points, friction points that keep a lot of women from making it to the next level. So from making it to director, making it to partner, those big, bold career steps. What have been some of the tools you've accessed, resources you've accessed to make you make that jump through the various stages?
So I think it depends on what you're trying to achieve. I mean, obviously, if you're going down quite a technical route,
yes,
you're a real techie person or something like that, or you've got some professional highly vocational or professional route, you do need to do the training, don't you, and the constant upskilling around those things. But I actually think those aren't the things that get you promoted and get you to the top. Those should be just everybody. They're sort of a given.
Yeah.
The things that you need support with are the things that, how do you be, how can you be a really good leader? How do you have resilience to the ups and downs? Leadership is fundamentally the thing that you really need if you're going to make it to senior positions. And I think some people are just naturally good at being leaders, but it's not something that you just are born with. You do learn it. And even if you start off not having much experience, I think everybody can be a really good leader. And I guess for me, leadership, it's if you want to become a really good leader, then you need to look to the people that you think are good leaders. What are the qualities they have? Because as you get more senior, you're not sitting there doing the technical things in the same way that you were before. What you're doing is the big strategic thinking. You're managing the teams and the people. You're driving things. You're not going to sit there doing all the technical stuff that you did 10 years ago. So it's a different set of skills that you need to cultivate to be a really good leader. And it's looking for the things that can help you teach you that. So whether it's courses or just by making sure that you're with people that you see are really good leaders, that create the right culture in their teams and organizations that empower you and others to be really good leaders. Because the top thing about a leader, a great leader, is a leader that empowers others to lead and doesn't have to take it all for themselves.
But that tends to be quite a female way of viewing things, because some of the things that our members tell us is that when they've worked in environments that are not very inclusive, they find that the leaders they work for take the credit, do not advocate for them. And they're constantly, they almost feel voiceless and unseen because somebody always takes the credit for them. So obviously you've been in really positive, nurturing environments.
Oh no,
but
I suspect all of what you're talking about. I still experience it today. I've had all of everything you've just spoken about.
So how do you deal with that? How do you deal when you find yourself in an environment where you have a manager, a leader who lacks the self-confidence and feel threatened by every talented person that comes on their team, and rather than being an advocate, tries to dim everybody else's light?
Well, I mean, so there are people like that, of course, how you've just described, but actually mostly what I see when I see people behaving like that is people that lack self-confidence and are vulnerable. So I try to look at it from a very different perspective. So I try to look at it with an empathy hat on. And that actually helps me personally deal with it, but also it helps me help them. It is difficult because I think when you're younger and lower, you're more junior, it's very difficult to challenge behaviors. And it comes back to what I was saying earlier about you have to make a decision about who you are. And I'm always a challenger, which I know will have resulted in certain things in my life, but there are ways to do it. You can challenge people's behavior in a way that is likely to have less of a negative impact on yourself. So I'm a great believer in speaking up. So I'm not going to challenge someone's behavior, a senior person, if they are presenting most of the work I've done or my team have done and they want to take the limelight or whatever it is. I'm not going to challenge them in an open forum around that, but I might take them for a walk, or I might talk to them personally and say, I felt a bit disappointed that you didn't let me do that with you. Imagine how much better it might have been if we'd done that together. Imagine the impact that it could have. could we try to do it together at the next time? So again, I think it's how you do these things. And some people that will never work with, they're never going to change.
Yes.
But, I have put that challenge to a lot of male leaders who have done exactly to me what you described. And 90% of the time it's had a positive impact. And I'm not necessarily doing it for me anymore. I'm doing it for the other women that I'm bringing up and that are coming behind, because, we have to. And also, what I point out to those male leaders is that other men will copy them. So, I try to talk to them as though, you have a great responsibility to make sure that others, don't copy some of these behaviors. And I try to understand why they're doing it. So again, I think it's about how you can approach them rather than feeling angry and hostile. And believe me, I felt all that, but try to approach them with a bit of empathy and try to approach it in a slightly different way. And I think you will get more of a positive response. And then if they say, okay, let's, I take on board what you've said, and you see some behavioral changes, obviously that's really positive, but you be really on it. So if you get a bit of a positivity out of it, make sure that it's booked in, that you are going to do something together, that you present together. So don't just say, let me do it. Say, could we do this together? Maybe I could do this bit, sort of sort it out what you're going to do, take a bit of control around it. And I suspect 90% of the time that will have the right effect.
Yeah. But why don't more women speak up? Well, because and do exactly what you've said.
Because it might impact their performance rating. Yes. They're worried about those things, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
They're worried. I think there's a bravery thing. There's a courage and a bravery thing. When I was a single mum and I had no other income, I didn't get the income from my son's father, I was constantly worried about not upsetting the boat. And I think there's certain times in your career where you might just have to accept that. But there are things you can do. You can do some gentle stuff like what I suggested around, at least sort of, rather than being challenging, saying, I'd really like you did that really presentation great, but I would really love the opportunity to do that with you. You can do some things to try and change it without totally going in there going, blah, 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 and all of this. So you can try that. I'm at a stage in my career right now where I don't give a. So I can be much more challenging. But it is difficult. I think it's very difficult for women coming up because they're worried about the impact it might have. What I would say again is that, I think all companies are striving for those things not to happen.
Yes, I agree.
I think you'll find that there is people that will listen. And even if it's not the person you're working for, there'll be other people that listen. And frankly, if you're working for shit, find another job, get another boss. We talked about that thing, maybe move sideways, because this isn't a great role model for you or anybody else. Look for the other opportunities, look for the good leaders, look for the people you think are great. A lot of women want to come and work for me because they know I'll mentor them, coach them, help get them promoted. But there's loads of men like that as well. So look for the people that you want to go and work for and start going and meeting them, start trying to find an opportunity with them. The worst thing you can do, and I've done this one as well, is get stuck in a rut and stay where you are if you're not happy. Just you've got, even if you're worried about a lot of things and life's busy and you're a bit stressed out, you've got to make a move. And as I said, that doesn't have to be trying to find a job outside the organization you work in. It might be a side step into another part of the organization. But don't wait to be pulled. I've waited before to be pulled. Find it yourself. You have to be proactive about these things.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Sheridan, because I think sometimes we think there's no cost and we are trying to play it safe.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, there's always a cost. That's your mental health, to your well-being, to your happiness. There's always some friction somewhere. And the quicker you make a choice, a decision, either to change the environment or to change and challenge behavior, to find that courage in you to do that, the quicker you can improve things for yourself and hopefully for others as well.
I agree, because if you just think, well, I'll stay and I'll just toe the line and I'll just accept it, the chances are that person's not going to promote you anyway.
Yes, exactly. They don't.
Yeah. And I mean, I say this from the position that I've done all the things wrong. I've done all the things we've talked about, and then I've done things right. I've been in all those situations, and I've definitely stayed too long in those situations in the past.
So, Sheridan, you have won an award. It's amazing that you've won the award. There are still a lot of women out there working really hard who deserve recognition, but don't prioritize making the time to step out there, apply for awards, and network externally outside of the organization. Why have you made the time, considering how busy you are, to do these things? And what can we tell others about why it's important that they do the same?
Well, I think in terms of the awards, it's a great honor to win an award for the things that you've done. Of course, the award that the wonderful awards that you presented to me are not just about me. They are about all the teams and all the effort that goes behind it. But, I felt a great sense of pride and happiness to have won those awards. And, I'm in my 50s, and that is the first individual award I've ever won. So I've done stuff around, and obviously I've done, I got an MBE, which is amazing and stuff like that. But I've never, ever put myself forward for an individual award before. It's not other people might have done, but I've never personally sort of done something like that. And so it is an honor to win something like that. And I'm a big fan, but I am a big fan of team awards. I'm a big fan of recognizing teams and combined effort. But I think the point that you made around networking and getting out there and putting yourself forward a bit more is really important. Again, I didn't do that for a very long time. I thought, people will recognize that I do a good job. If I just work hard and don't win and do this all the time, I just work hard, I'm a great person, I do all these things right, people will just know. They don't. You do have to get better at promoting yourself a bit, not in a horrible way. I mean, please, not in a cringeworthy way, but there are some cringeworthy things that go on out there as well that I'm like, oh no, but you know what I mean. But you can. I mean, some of the social media stuff I find really hard at times when I see some of that, because it feels like people are going too far in trying to put themselves out there. But you can sort of get better at letting people know about the fantastic things you're doing, but always be humble about it, is my sort of advice. Always include all the other people, because I don't think any of us are successful on our own. Anything we do is very rarely, unless you're a sports person or something like that, and you sort of just won a running race. How many things can you say? And even that, they've got coaches. Do you know what I mean? How much can you ever say in life that was solely down to you? So I think put yourself forward more, be very clear on what your strengths are. So one of the best pieces of advice anybody ever gave me was, Sheridan, you never know when you'll be talking to the person that will influence your life. Always know what's your elevator pitch around, not that you're trying to sell yourself, but what's your really sort of casual way of describing what you do, what your strengths are, and where you want to go in life. And that's not about, I want to be the CEO of this. It's about, I want to have this impact. I'd really like to work in this type of environment. Or, I'd like to be able to say when I'm 60 that I did this. And what your values are. So I think always being able to be able to say those things. So whoever you meet in life, in your own organization or externally, you know, if you're in a networking event, whatever it is, that you can sort of say a few things about yourself that's putting yourself forward in a authentic and, you know, positive but humble way. You never know what door then might open, because those people remember that. They remember. And if you do network, it's a way of finding people that might help you find what happens next for you. You just sit and never meet anybody. How's anybody, you know, it's how are you ever going to sort of move outside of where you are now? And you do need to put yourself out there more. Men are very good at it. We need to get better at it.
We definitely need to get better at it. And there's a point you made about being visible, but I want to take it back to when you're a single mom and perhaps not having the time to do all that and working really long hours. How were you able to navigate all of this visibility, networking, stakeholders, staff, whilst you were still the sole parent of a child?
Well, to be absolutely honest, I probably didn't. I mean, I think, again, there's different phases in your life, isn't there? And at that time, I probably didn't do it as much as I should have done. Not when Michael was really little. I think when he got a bit older and I was back more into full-time work, I started to get better at it. I mean, certainly after, you know, my first sort of really professional, more services tech role was at Accenture after I did an MBA. And, you know, that was where I started to learn to do what we're describing, the network a little bit, be able to talk about myself a bit more, to have a bit more of a view on what I wanted to do with my career. But I mean, you know, I was well into my 30s by that age. And I think that's what I'm saying. I didn't necessarily do all those things as good as I should have done when I was younger. And it is difficult to balance it all. But as I just said, if you sit down with a piece of paper just for an hour and you wrote down, these are the 3 sentences that would describe what I do. These are the 3 sentences that describe what I'd like to do, you know, in the next 5 to 10 years. It's just, if you can just have a bit of an elevator pitch, then whoever you meet, you know, at any time, whether it's having a drink or a coffee or whatever, you've got clarity in your head. Because what happens to me is somebody will come to me just for a chat and they won't be able to tell me any of what I've just described. So if I say to them, you know, it's great that you've come to me for a chat, but what are you looking to get? You know, what is it you want to get out of this chat?
Yeah.
What's your ambition? And again, I'm not talking about I want to be the CEO or I want to be this. It's more around you as a human being and the impact that you want to have. It's not about a grade or a position. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I'm a big advocate for that. I'm always asking people about the impact they want to have, the change they want to be remembered for, because that's how success comes. It's not going to come because you said, I want to be CEO. It's going to come because you were able to do one particular thing really well and have an impact. Yeah. And for people to believe in you so much that they wanted to follow you. So I want to talk about
much better than me, but that's exactly what I mean. If you come to me and say, oh, well, I want you to help me do my director case. I'm like, okay, so you want to get to director, but what is it?
Why?
Yeah, so that's exactly what I mean, what you just said.
Yeah. And so you have led teams, you've built teams, you said yourself, people want to work for you. And when I met you at the awards, I was really struck by your dedication of the awards to your team. And to everybody else who had helped you achieve what you've achieved in your career. And you're very humble. I think that's the word people use to describe you as well, that you're very humble. So you do practice all the things that you're saying. How are you leading? How are you showing up every day that people want to come and work for you? Because that's what more women need. For to present in a way, to speak in a way, to lead in a way that enables people to step outside of their biases and to see the potential and the vision that they're offering?
Well, I mean, I let them lead. That's the truth. I don't run hierarchical teams. I bring complementary people together that have really complementary skills, and I help them find their strengths, work on their weaknesses, and I empower them to be the leaders. I'm really proud to say that I've got, somebody just been helping someone get promoted to director at PwC to take over all my technology innovation work.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been working with her for a few years. She's absolutely incredible. But it's been an absolute privilege to support her in that in achieving what she wants. Because I could see all the potential, but I mean, she's quite different to what she was when I first met her. She wasn't as confident, didn't have as much of the gravitas that she has now, but it was all there. But she needed a mentor and a coach and someone that believed in her and also believed in her ability to lead. I mean, wow, she's just incredible now. Every time I see her give a presentation or anything, I'm like, blimey, she's so amazing. I'm like a proud mum. But I've got men that I've done that for as well. So for me, it comes back to that bit I was saying about a good leader empowers others to lead. You help them be leaders. You help them take on responsibility themselves. And obviously, you need to make sure they've got the right technical expertise and they get trained. It comes back to what I was saying before. What you need to do for them is to help mentor, coach them and teach them and let them see you do it. And that's why some working in the office is good, because they need to learn from you, is, see what it is to be a good leader and to bring teams together and to get the best out of teams and people. And honestly, it's the best thing. That is the best thing about getting more senior, that you can do that. I mean, it's so much more. It's so rewarding to be able to do that. And it's actually what your legacy is. When I leave, that's my legacy, that I've got all of these people, all of these junior people that have, I've helped mentor and coach, that will be the future, that are the future leaders.
Tell us about Tech She Can and the impact you're trying to have with that.
Well, Tech She Can is an industry backed charity. It's only been a charity really for just over 18 months, but for that it was a charter, and it really came out of some research that I commissioned when I was leading the sort of women in tech initiatives at PwC, because I couldn't understand why it seemed to be that there was less women coming through from schools and universities and colleges into tech careers. There seemed to be less women. It seemed to be going down in terms of how many are doing computer science at degree level. In fact, even today, the average is only 15% of computer science participation is at degree level is from women, and only about half of them then go into the workforce. And I was like, what's going on at the school level? And although we see, there's issues in the whole pipeline, advance, retain, all of those parts of the pipeline, so for all ages for women, I was just really sort of shocked that this was happening at such an early stage in the pipeline. So that research was quite pivotal, and it sort of gave us some really good information, which we then sort of launched in an event at the Science Museum, and we invited a lot of organisations and government. And 18 organisations put their hand up to say, okay, we'll do something about it, because actually industry have the answers, because the research gave us that, careers in tech weren't being put forward to girls to as much as it was to boys, by careers advisors, teachers or parents. It just wasn't being put forward. Girls were saying, we know who Ada Lovelace is. She might have been dead 100 years, but we know who she is. We know who Sheryl Sandberg is. But how are they relatable role models? I mean, it doesn't make me think, ooh, I want to be an ethical cyber hacker, or I want to be a data analyst. So, where are the relatable role models that are at the beginning of their careers? And the other thing is that, kids at school, they don't understand, although they all use technology proficiently, they don't understand the connection between technology and the jobs. And they don't understand the connection between technology and their passions, like if it's sport or English or the environment and all these things. And so that's why you don't see the issue with biology, because they get, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a nurse, but they don't get that tech can have a really positive impact on their aspirations, on their family, their community, the UK and the wider world. So in effect, that's what Tech She Can does. Tech She Can is a tech ed careers charity. We inspire girls and boys, but we've made it all female friendly in the way that I described, by addressing all of that research. So we have loads of role models from across the partners, the organizational partners of Tech She Can. We've addressed all of the research. I'm proud to say that in the last 18 months, we've reached 50,000 children in schools directly. So that's us either in person or virtually doing lessons. We do these mega assemblies. So on Safer Internet Day, we had 13,000 children in one lesson that morning from 338 schools. So it's having a massive impact, particularly on that sort of early pipeline, in just inspiring them to even consider technology as a subject and a career.
So anyone listening to this and wants to be involved, how can they get involved to support the mission?
Well, there's some great ways to get involved. If you work for a company and your company isn't already signed up as a member or a strategic partner, then you can certainly reach out to us and find out what that entails. If you're an individual, so we have nearly 500 champions that we train to go out into the schools. They become STEM ambassadors at the same time. We get everything sorted for them. And we've got everything ready, all the presentations. We have animations for the younger, for the primary school children. And so we have this army of champions that go out and also teach in schools all the materials that we've produced. So lots of ways to get involved. Just Google Tech She Can. You're not going to be able to miss it. It's all on there, and there's a way to get in contact with us on the website.
Fabulous. And I'm also delighted that since we met, we have agreed to have Tech She Can as the charity partner at our awards this year in London on the 24th of November. So come and support, be part of it, nominate women in your team, leaders in your team, and let's find the next Sheridan, because she's hiding somewhere in there, not putting in an application, and we need to tap on the shoulder so she can do that. So the last two questions we have, Sheridan, are really just for me. One is about how you show up so wonderfully immaculate, calm, together with such gravitas and presence. I'm just curious, is there anything you do? Is there a particular time you wake up? Any routine you follow that is just making you look so well?
Well, I don't know. I'm wearing very good makeup,
That is a tip. Wear good makeup.
I did blow dry my hair for you as well.
Blow dry your hair.
I think for me, the two things that I do to try and stay healthy mentally and physically, and I've realized as I've got older, it's more and more important, is I am very careful with my diet. I do eat very healthily, lots of fruit and veg and those sorts of things. And I'm very careful about how I eat during the day to maintain energy, because I find if I do eat loads of sugar and all the wrong things, I don't have any energy. The other thing is movement. Honestly, there's days when I'm just like, I just don't have time to go and do any exercise. I don't have time to move. But what I've learned is that just going for a short walk, or even what I'll do is, like all of you, I've sometimes got back-to-back meetings like this all day long. And it can really, I find it really actually gets me down and makes me feel quite depressed, because I just need a break from the screen. I'll just force it now. I will get up, even if I run around the house because I'm working from home, or I run up and down the stairs, or I just go and stand in the garden. Even in the winter, I've done it. I'm going to stand in the garden with my cup of tea. Just a few small things like that have made a massive difference to how I feel. I'm not saying I still don't have some really shitty days. We all do. Not every day can be the best day.
No.
But I find making some small things, small changes like that, how I eat during the day, not sitting with all the biscuits and the stuff like that, and just getting outside, even if it's just to stand in the garden in the winter with a cup of tea. Honestly, it's really made a big difference to how I feel physically and mentally.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well. I stopped
Dyson, I'm afraid. Dyson dryer. And
yeah. Well, I mean, I totally agree with everything you said. I cut out sugar. I used to think sugar gave you energy, and then I realized that actually no, it just rids you of the little energy that you have.
I used to feel sleepy if I ate something too sugary.
Yeah,
at lunchtime. I'd really, that noddy head thing. That never happens anymore. Never.
Fabulous. Well, that's a tip we can all go away and experiment with and apply to our own lives. And then, is there a book you've read recently that has been very helpful that you can recommend to our audience?
Within the last week or so, I interviewed Dame Stephanie Shirley, who hopefully you've all heard of. If you haven't, please read her book. And also, if you Google it and put PwC in there, you'll find the registration link. And if you register, you'll automatically get the link to the recording. I think she's 90 now. I mean, honestly, she's just incredible. I've met her before and she blows me away every time. So if you don't know her story, what's her book? Letting It Go, I think.
Yes.
I read it for the second time recently. Her story is, just mind-boggling. And she has, although she's 90, everything she talks about, the lessons, they're so relevant to women today.
Yes.
So I really recommend reading her book.
Yes. Oh, she's one of our favorites. We gave her a lifetime award. I've met her. Her book is fantastic. I mean, she's a trailblazer. Even at 90, I follow her on Instagram. Yeah, she's on Instagram. She's very active on Instagram. And I want to be like her when I'm 90. I think that's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, she's amazing. And on the webcast that I did with her, the live stream, she was I said, are you ever going to retire? No. And she said that she walks every day, and she was talking about the things that we've just talked about. She still exercises, that she eats better, she eats well, and that she's found that's maintained her energy and her mental state. And I mean, she literally had a nervous breakdown when she was younger. It's a fantastic read and a lot of lessons from it. So highly recommend it.
Yeah, fabulous. Well, Sheridan, thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing interviewing you, learning from you. If you are listening to this interview or watching it on YouTube, you can subscribe and also follow Sheridan on LinkedIn. She is on LinkedIn and she is active. You can talk to her on there. And if you're new to the Forward Ladies community, you can go to forwardladies.com and subscribe to be a member. We have a 14-day free trial. We have events, we have mentoring. We just try and bring you the most inspiring interviews as well. I'm Griselda Togobo, in case I failed to introduce myself earlier on. Well, thank you so much for your time and have a lovely day.